Hello everyone and welcome to this SFIA update webinar. This is the first time that we've run an event like this, so I hope you'll find it informative and interesting. If you want to ask a question during the course of the session, there's a Q&A feature. There's a Q&A window that you can type your question into, and you can enable that window by clicking on the Q&A button on your Zoom window. We will have opportunities during the session to perhaps pick up questions that we feel we can answer in line. But if we don't answer your question, don't worry, because we will be tracking all the questions and taking them offline. We'll be in touch with you after the event with an answer or a response. We will be recording the webinar, so you don't need to take too much in the way of notes. There will be a link sent off afterwards so you can replay the webinar and watch it again. As I say, do drop a note into the Q&A panel if you want us to get in touch, or if you want to be involved in SFIA 8 yourself in some way. We'd look forward to hearing you. So there's a number of you out there from various parts of the world. People from 30 countries were invited to participate in these webinars today and tomorrow. And the background to that basically is because of the widespread involvement and collaboration and interest in SFIA around the world. So it is great to see you all with us today. That is the reason why we're running 2 of these events, so that we can cover the time zones 12 hours west and 12 hours east of the center of that map. I think it's worth just mentioning that some of the countries we see here represented have been with us for a long time. Chile and Australia have been represented for many, many years in driving SFIA forward. And so we're pleased to welcome some new joiners as well, in addition to those from newer countries to take an interest in SFIA, such as Mexico and Saudi Arabia. And many others. I don't want to exclude anyone here. It's great to have the involvement that we have. So because of the breadth of interest and the level of interest in SFIA and the scope of today's webinar, it's not practical to have an open forum discussion. Rather, it's an informational webinar, which, as I say, I hope you will find interesting and useful. And on the panel for this session, we have Ian Seward, who is the SFIA Foundation General Manager, Peter Leather, who's the Project Manager for SFIA 8 and Updates Manager for SFIA, Grant Nicholson, who's with the Australian Public Service, driving one of the most major user organizations of SFIA to contribute to the SFIA 8 program, and myself, Andy Thomson, and I'm chair of the SFIA Council. So it's not a presentation from us to you so much as a gathering of thoughts and ideas which we're keeping you up to date with. And these ideas and thoughts have come from all over the world and from many, many contributors to SFIA 8. So what we're hoping to cover, or intending to cover in this presentation, is a bit around the world of SFIA. SFIA is more than just the core framework. We'll look at how SFIA approaches the updating process, and specifically what the progress and the timeline is for SFIA 8. And then we'll take a look at some of the key themes that are being explored for SFIA 8, which I'm sure will be the core of interest for many of you. And finish off with some tools that are useful for driving this global collaboration that is already underway. So there will be some of you out there who've been working with us for some time and who know SFIA very well. There will be others, however, who we've invited into the webinar and into the program, who are less experienced with SFIA, but are nevertheless interested in what's going on. And so you might find some of the content familiar, but I'm sure that you will find most of it new and stimulating. So what I want to do then at this point is to kick off with the item 2 there, which is the story around SFIA being more than just the core framework.
Thanks, Andy. As Andy mentioned at the start, we have a varied audience, so I thought I'd take just a few minutes to put the work of the SFIA Foundation and the global volunteers into context. As well as taking input from our user base, we also look at the industry as a whole. A recent study by the World Economic Forum looked at future jobs, those showing increasing demand and those decreasing in demand. SFIA is very well placed. For almost all of the jobs in demand, SFIA describes the competencies they need. The jobs highlighted in green are where the SFIA 7 already provides a strong or complete match. Jobs highlighted in orange are where SFIA provides a partial match. We've identified a number of areas that we will be strengthening in SFIA 8, and these include artificial intelligence and machine learning. And so to the SFIA framework, currently at SFIA 7 and available on the website. Most of you will be familiar with the core assets, the complete reference guide and the SFIA summary charts, where we present the framework as a whole, the 7 levels of responsibility, the 5 generic attributes, the 102 professional skills. All of this is presented in a consistent style and structure throughout to aid navigation and use. The framework, SFIA 7, is available at present in 10 languages: German, Spanish, French, Polish, Italian, Arabic, Japanese, Chinese and Canadian French, and of course in English. In addition, we are currently working on Dutch, Brazilian Portuguese and Russian. So let's take a very brief look at SFIA in context, why the framework exists. In order to manage and develop skills and competencies, as an individual, as an organisation, or for an integrated national initiative, you need to be able to talk about them in a common language. Not just within your organisation, but across organisations, across domains, and across countries. So to do what is on the left-hand side, the 7 key aspects of human capital development, you need what is on the right-hand side, and that is SFIA. The theme of this section is really that it is more than just the SFIA framework, and indeed a whole ecosystem has grown up as a result of the international use of SFIA by many different stakeholders. Over the years we've gained this global user base, and that is represented by the blue blocks around the outside. It's a wide range of individuals, organisations and governments, and they use SFIA simply because it's useful. We have not tried to roll it out. We haven't mandated where or how SFIA is used. Naturally, the user base, as they mature in their usage of SFIA, they want more from the foundation, and that is our ecosystem. So between the core framework and the user base, we have an inner ring of activities where we provide more information and we work on a number of assets. These are what the users have requested. It's driven by user demand and with a principle of collaboration for the benefit of the industry as a whole. It includes the framework, of course, but it also includes guidance. And one area that we have recently published is assessment guidelines to give an idea of how an organisation should assess the skills and competencies of individuals. We've also collected a number of standard role profiles to present as examples. We've also published how we carry out SFIA accreditation, the accreditation of SFIA accredited consultants and SFIA accredited partner organisations. We've published the SFIA training syllabus. We've also published a number of SFIA views, and these are particularly liked by the user base as they provide a way of looking at SFIA for a particular environment. Another area that has been incredibly well received is our mapping to bodies of knowledge. In 2019, we published a list of 37 bodies of knowledge that are all relevant to different areas of SFIA, and these have been, as I said, particularly well liked by industry as we've brought them together in one place for the first time. Two other areas we're looking at present, largely due to interest from the industry, is first of all digital badging and credentials, and the second area is in further attempts at making SFIA more and more open. And we publish what we have on the SFIA website. This is our means of making things available to the global community. You can find the future framework. This is where you'll see changes to the framework, and you will be able to see the changes as they are incorporated into the framework to see SFIA 8 being built as it happens. We also have an area here for tools and resources, and under tools and resources you'll find the guidance material and other useful documents to help. You'll find a detailed SFIA assessment guides. You'll also find the bodies of knowledge, the SFIA views, the skills profiles, and indeed other mappings. Of course, you'll also be able to find SFIA 7 in the 10 languages and various other collaborations and also a search function. And of course, you'll also find links to SFIA accredited consultants and SFIA accredited partners. We have a great provenance and a solid track record of open consultation and wide collaboration. 20 years as SFIA, and probably 30 years if you include our ancestors. It all started as a UK initiative with a number of UK companies, Cabinet Office, large government departments coming together to actually develop a skills and competency framework. UK consultation continued, and that turned into, as a result of global use, a global open consultation. What is really exciting is that in the last 5 to 7 years, that has turned into a truly international open collaborative project, developing each successive version of SFIA. We update every 3 years. Any more frequently and there would be little stability, any less frequently and the framework would become stale and less relevant. The scale of collaboration has grown year on year, and we've built the infrastructure necessary to continue to develop the core framework and support the ecosystem. Both the core framework and the SFIA ecosystem are developed through a process of evolution, and this will continue. But above all, it's due to the efforts of a great many volunteers who gladly give their time. A key feature of the way the SFIA Foundation works is that we are completely open and transparent. We certainly make available everything we're working on as we are working on it, so that the user base, and indeed others, can see what we are doing. So, to the SFIA Foundation as a whole. We have our user base, which is a source of industry expertise. It's made up of users, end-user organisations, SFIA accredited consultants, and SFIA accredited partner organisations. In addition to that, we have the SFIA Council, which is a global advisory group, and also the SFIA Design Authority Board, which is responsible for the framework integrity. There is then the administration function of the Foundation to look after the framework and the ecosystem, and that consists of the General Manager, myself, the Update Manager, Peter Leather, Business Administrator, Lucy Ryan, and a number of other people who volunteer from time to time. And below this we have the SFIA Board, whose role in the Foundation is one of governance, to ensure that we continue with our aim and operate appropriately. As a global not-for-profit foundation, our aim is very simple: to develop, maintain and support the global skills and competency framework and support the global ecosystem. We receive no central funding, no commercial funding, and operate a license model to generate the revenue necessary to operate. Most use remains under a free of charge license. And finally, at least for me for the moment, the SFIA Council. The SFIA Council is the global advisory group, as I said. We cover 5 continents, and over the years we've had representation from around 30 countries. Council provides an opportunity to address framework issues for skills and competencies and discuss these at a global level and explore how they may be developed and used. Most members of SFIA Council are extensive SFIA users, but this is not essential. All that is really required is a shared interest and willingness to share and collaborate. And now I'll hand over to our update manager, Peter Leather, to take us through where we are with SFIA 8.
Okay, so the headline, I'm just going to give you a run through about what we're doing and when. It's not a lot of detail, and I'll explain why we haven't got a lot of detail of the plan. But the headline is we're looking to publish the new version of SFIA 8 in Q3 of next year. So that is sometime after July. We've given ourselves a little bit of a window there, which will allow us to hit that timetable, but we don't know exactly when yet until we've gone through the scoping exercise and started to create SFIA 8. Our plan is that we will have a beta version. That's something we did for SFIA 7, which, as Ian already mentioned, is a chance for people to see exactly what's coming down, to test it, to look at it, and give us a chance to make improvements before we go to the final published version. And we started this back in May of this year, and we deliberately started slightly earlier than we did for SFIA 7 to give us a chance to have more sharing, more discussion, and to tackle some of the interesting industry topics that we know are out there. So what have we been doing since then, and what we'll be doing up until the beta release? You know, the headline news is we're talking to people who are interested. We'll be mobilizing working groups. We've been talking to individuals who've got ideas and willing to volunteer. And we've been plowing through some of the key themes and the change requests that come through. An idea then is to build up a nice scope of activity that makes the SFIA 8 reflect what users are looking for and what they're expecting to see. Now, one thing we are also looking to do is to start a process of translation. Previously, we've started the translation after the publication of the English version. We want to start that earlier in the process so that there's not such a long time delay between the English language version being published and the other languages. So we have got a tool in place to help us do that, and that will be an experiment to see how well we can do that alongside the development of the core framework. One of the groups mentioned earlier by Ian was the SFIA Design Authority. So this is a small group of experienced SFIA users, and it's fantastic. They've actually got the same core group involved this time around who are involved in SFIA 7. And that continuity of thought and understanding how the process works is really useful to have, and I think bodes well for having a smooth process and one that will really focus on the quality of what we want for SFIA 8. And it's that SFIA Design Authority has a prime role in deciding what's going to be in SFIA 8 and setting the right quality and making sure what we publish is what's needed by the industry and is degree of integrity across previous versions and across the whole of SFIA 8. A very important role there. Now, what we've also mentioned, and if you go back to Ian's slide where we had the ecosystem building, we have since SFIA 7, tried to build this in such a way that we're not a project that emerges for a year and then goes back to sleep, that we're trying to have a continuous approach to this, so that we can build the SFIA ecosystem before SFIA 8, we make the changes, and then we keep on building it. So it becomes less of a stop-start approach. And the tools we've got in place support that. So we have consultation and collaboration around this that we can keep going. And in fact, the opportunity to raise change requests has been in place since very shortly after we published version 7. And people have been using that as well. So we've had ideas coming forward straight away. And we'll keep it open as soon as we've launched SFIA 8 as well. So it's a different way of managing things, which seems to be working so far. And I like to draw a picture, and this is how I kind of envisaged that we're encouraging lots of community activity and collaboration. That's what the heart of what SFIA is about in terms of how it manages things. And we have seen an increase in level, and my chart there showing that activity growing over time. Now for SFIA 8, we will have a bit of a peak of activity because we've got lots of time-dependent activity that's needed to deliver the framework. But what I'm really hoping is that we settle back down after SFIA 8, so after Q3 next year, with an increasing level of activity and collaboration. So people out there who are listening to this, we are interested in getting you involved, and if you can get involved now for SFIA 8, that is really good, and lots of people have done that, but it's not a one-off opportunity. There's opportunities throughout this process, and we'd love to hear from people who want to get involved and start sharing some of these activities and keeping us building the core framework and the ecosystem. And this is how the consultation process works. It's not rocket science, it's a matter of listening and gathering as much input as we can, sifting through it, so we see what the industry is saying, what's happening in the industry, what the key developments are, and then we look and see what should SFIA do about it as a core framework or as the ecosystem. SFIA is not the answer to everything, so there may well be some things we say, well, that's very interesting, but we're not sure it's in SFIA's remit to do something about that. Or we may say, look, we need to update the framework, or actually we think we should be updating some of the surrounding ecosystem. So we develop tools and resources, or we update the framework. We do that with the help of the people on the right-hand side, working groups, volunteers, and the design authority. And then we have a process of openly checking back and saying, are we reaching what the industry is looking for? So we can check that, test, use the beta release to do that activity. So hopefully that through that process, we get a good range of ideas coming forward, and we do test them to make sure that they're going to work. The fact is that until people start using SFIA in large volumes, some of the things don't. Some of the opportunities or things we've missed may not appear, and that's another good reason for why we have the consultation process open, so that people can immediately start to give them feedback on what's in there. But in previous years, we do see a nice stable product that people can use, and gradually we start to see change requests coming through or ideas for how we can develop the ecosystem. And that's a summary of the types of things we'll deliver within SFIA 8, and the focus will be on the left-hand side, the core framework. That's the real time-dependent activity, and we will try and do as much as we can of the right-hand side. As a project, we have no fixed resources. We're reliant on volunteer time and effort, so we have to be quite focused in terms of what we must deliver, and then hopefully build up a head of steam that we can deliver some of the tools and resources to support it. And I'm pretty confident where we're sitting now that we will deliver something that hits the left-hand side, plus lots of good stuff for the right-hand side. And where we are at the moment, so we've been going since May this year. And what it feels like from my perspective is that we go through this activity of diverging thoughts, creating lots of choices. It's a lot of people throwing really good ideas and interesting thoughts forward. But then we reach a point where the dotted line is that we need to converge, and we go from creating lots of choices to making some choices, and that can be quite hard work because we're focused on not doing things as opposed to doing things. So it's quite a shift in focus for us. And to give you a sense of that, this is a planning tool I used with the design authority that we can map the key themes. So some of you'll have seen this before, and each of the rectangles on the grid are the key themes we've been looking at, and we can map about how well we know what the solution might be, how big or small the solution might be, and what sort of demand is out there, and that helps us plan our efforts. So what we've been focusing on at the moment is moving some of the big ideas across to the left-hand side, because we need to get our hands around them, agree exactly what we're going to do about it. So when Grant comes to talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning, it starts off as a blank sheet of paper, and we've gradually started to move forward and say, this is what we might do in that area. And we've taken that approach across a number of themes. There's still work to be done. And if I made my version of a Kanban board, it looks something like this, where we've got some of the themes we haven't started on. Somewhere we're still in the process of diverging and creating choices, and somewhere we've moved into the next phase of saying, right, we're homing in now and documenting and ready to start creating new skill descriptions. And in fact, for some of them, we've already published some of those on the SFIA 8 website. So that gives you a feel for how the approach works. As I say, the key thing is there's still time to get involved, and whether that's for SFIA 8, some of the themes you've seen on there, or other areas, please get in touch. And next up is there any questions we need to answer, Andy?
There is a question that I could throw open to Ian, if you're there, Ian. It's a procedural question rather than a SFIA content question. Ian Seward, are you there?
I can answer that one, Andy.
You can, okay. Straightforward.
So
I could answer it, but I don't have the position of authority.
Yeah. So thanks for the question. It's a question from Kevin, is saying, when would you anticipate the partner tool providers getting hold of V8 content in good time? So I think, like last time, Kevin, we'll have the beta available so you can start to see what's in there. And the publishing, so we publish to the web and we publish various documents and things. So there'll certainly be an opportunity to have the beta version available for partners and everyone else. And the website will be trailing what's coming, so it'll all be open. So I don't think there should be any problems with that. Okay, so I am now going to hand over to Grant. Grant's going to, as well as talking about a couple of the themes, Grant's also going to give us a bit of background into the way the SFIA 8 project has been working in Australia, and hopefully, if the technology holds up, a bit of a insight into some of the approaches that the Australian Public Service is taking with SFIA.
Let me give it a go. Let's see how we go. Let me take over control. So the Australian Public Service uses SFIA quite extensively. So we're in that category of a user group, and so we have an interest in how the framework develops, and so we're keenly involved and directly engaged with the SFIA 8 work. We have a coverage across the whole of the Australian federal government, and many of our state governments also have a whole of government licenses, so we can use SFIA throughout our jurisdictions. We mostly use SFIA for things like role definitions, career pathways, developing capability, and recruitment processes. And we try and do things in the open where we can. So, for example, all of the role definitions we have for APS roles, for Australian Public Service roles, are published on data.gov.au. If you wanted to go and have a look at them, you could just go to data.gov.au and search for the word career, and you'll find our career pathways framework and all the data that's associated with that. Or if you get these slides later on, that hyperlink there is active and you can follow that. We've also been doing some work on trying to help people navigate all of that data. So there's at the moment we have about 150 roles defined. That's not the complete set. We have to do more work to define more. We haven't filled in all of the roles in the digital space yet. but there's a good chunk of them. But that's a lot of data in itself. So how do people navigate through that? We've created a tool called the APS Career Pathfinder, which enables people to explore these roles, do a little bit of a self-assessment of their skills, and figure out what their skill gap might be and where their interest might be able to take them. I'm going to try and show you that now. Let me just see if the technology will let me get into that. And this is what the tool looks like. You can explore it yourself if you like. The concept is you go over to your skills panel on the left and select the set of skills that you believe you have. You can browse the SFIA framework through and pick the skills you think you have and set the levels of them, or you can find roles which have a predefined set of skills and just grab that set and edit it as you see fit. We do use other skill frameworks. So SFIA is our primary framework, but you'll also find details about the SciSec framework, which is a cybersecurity specific framework in there. And as we go along, we may be adding other frameworks for specific areas of specialities. What people do then is can explore roles based on their level of match to the skills, to the skills required in a particular role, learn information about what the roles are, go and get things like information about what it would mean to be a person in one of these roles. Is this something that will be of interest to me? Then what will I have to learn for it? They can actually read about what they need to be able to do, and then potentially use connections off to learning management systems and other sources of learning content to figure out how to develop those skills. They can also search and hunt by interest rather than just by what skills you've got. So you're not restricted to just recycling your existing skills. You can actually explore by what interests you. And the idea is to try and get people interested in developing their personal set of capabilities and growing their skills. Okay, I will switch back to the slides. Okay, that was just in case the technology didn't work, that was a backup. So the SFIA community in Australia is quite active. We have regular community meetups, and one of the things we did over the last 6 months was run a series of workshops to figure out what sort of things do we want to see in SFIA 8. Some of the key themes that came out of those workshops and that we've done work on, one was professional ethics, and we've already formulated a change request and submitted that. You could go to the SFIA Foundation's website and look at the change request that we've been submitting and see our complete submission for the incorporation of ethics into the levels of responsibility. Special thanks to Phil Lovell for coordinating that one. Behavioural skills, we did an analysis of how behavioural skills are currently used in SFIA and made some suggestions on how that could be tidied up, made clearer and strengthened. There's some that analysis is available on the SFIA website as well, and special thanks to Phil Lovell and Penny Coulter for putting that all together and doing that great bit of work there. Regarding computational science or scientific computing, whichever way you'd like to refer to it, we have put together a proposal for 3 new skills related to that area, and that's on the website as well. So if you go to the change request, you'll see the full change request for computational science skills, the details of what we're suggesting to go into those skills, and some example role profiles of where those skills would be used. In the AI machine learning space, we've also, special thanks to Ole Nicholson at Geoscience Australia for coordinating that work on the computational science skills. The AI machine learning, we're still developing what that change proposal, change request will look like, but it's nearing towards the completion of that. We're looking like proposing 2 new skills and then an adjustment to a skill to recognise AI machine learning. And that work has been really spearheaded by Mark Brown from Kinetic and Ian Opperman, the New South Wales Government Chief Data Scientist. So thank you to those guys for developing that. Let's look at some of the details. So what is computational science all about? Well, there are quite a lot of government agencies that deal with science, things like geoscience, meteorology. We have a Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, has a lot of different branches of science they look after, defence science and technology, and nuclear science and technology. And this is probably replicated out in the private sector as well. A lot of these people are using serious computing power to help do their science work. And so this is where that need for skills related to computational science came from. The 3 new skills that we're suggesting to be added are around scientific modelling, numerical analysis, and high performance computing. And if you're curious about what those are, the full details are, as I said, available on the website in the change request. We also think that it would be interesting for people to actually see real science jobs and how they describe the use of those skills, as well as other SFIA skills that are required in those jobs. And that's why we put some profiles up there with them as well. In the AI machine learning space, well, there's a lot of interest and activity in this space. We've done some exploratory work. We realize there's more to be done, particularly around the whole ecosystem, how AI, machine learning, and big data all work together, and where the SFIA and skills landscape fits into it. So hopefully we'll be coming up with a view that will help integrate all that and make it clear as to how the suite of skills in SFIA apply and can help in the AI machine learning space, data science space. The 2 new skills we're looking at introducing are around machine learning and teaching of machines. The distinction there is that the teaching of machines is more about preparing the data and testing it in the AI engine, or testing it in the learning module that's been built. Whereas learning of machines is actually building the model itself. Teaching machine learning is building that model before you teach it. There's also a suggestion to a change to the analytics skill, because at the moment the skill of analytics actually mentions machine learning. So we've got a specific machine learning skill that we probably don't need to have it mentioned in the same way in the analytics skill. And there are a few other considerations around about, particularly around ethics, because ethics is significant to the machine learning space, particularly in the point of bias that could potentially be built into machine learning systems. And very important for all that will be a view to bring that all together. Okay, I'll hand over now to Andy, I think.
Thank you very much, Grant. That was almost seamless. We're just, there we go. We've got the same slides, but this time from my computer. And yes, the third topic that we selected to explore in this session is people management. So it's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum to the computational science and machine learning world, highly technical, deeply scientific. We're dealing here with skills that are, as I say, at the opposite end of the spectrum, and prompted really by the scope of SFIA covering the role of team managers, of line managers, and people managers more broadly. And the sort of skills we're looking at there are the skills about allocating and monitoring performance around task management, developing skills within the team, managing the relationships within and between the team and other parties, managing the more formal business processes around absence and discipline and so on. And also providing engagement and motivation for the team and context in terms of organizational goals. But of course, in many organizations, the role of the team manager is overlaps and dovetails with the role of what until recently we would have called HR, but the people profession. So who are responsible for the company's policy around employee health and well-being, employee relations, industrial relations, if you like, and staff relationships generally, matters around equality and diversity and inclusion, the formal process around recruitment, reward. Of course, there's a long list of things that HR may be responsible for, but in a different type of organization, the line manager might be responsible for. And so we have to look at how to articulate these skills in SFIA so that it can apply in the most wide variety of situations. And that includes the evolution of teams which are not line managed, but which are self-managed. But regardless of who is performing these skills, they need to be performed in some way by someone. And in performing the people management skills, that interplays with the behaviors that Grant was mentioning a moment ago, for which the analysis of which we have to thank Penny Coulter and Phil Lovell again, who did sterling work on mapping the behaviors to SFIA as it currently stands. But essentially what we're saying here, though, is that we need to include enough in SFIA so that when we say that SFIA can be used to plan and organize, acquire, deploy, assess, analyze, develop, and reward, that the skills are there in the framework to support the roles that are doing that, support the people that are doing that. There are a couple of personal or people management skills in SFIA at the moment, a handful of them, including resourcing, including performance management, and they have been subject to examination and taking apart molecule by molecule to see if we can improve the readability of them and improve the coverage of them to include more of the aspects I've just been talking about. So the likely outcome of this part of the SFIA 8 focus will be some updates to those skills. Resourcing is one of these skills that line managers say, oh yes, I do that. And then they read the skill. And in fact, they say, oh no, I don't do that. HR does that. So we need to have some way of articulating it so that what line managers and team managers do is well articulated in the skill. But not leaving out the activities that may be performed by more senior managers around workforce planning, for example. Performance management, it was an interesting skill when it was introduced in version 6. It may be misinterpreted by people who want it to apply to business performance or sales performance. But it does refer to people performance, and it describes it reasonably well, but there are gaps in there, and there are areas that needed tidying up. So there'll be a refresh of the performance management skill we would envisage in version 8. But it's quite likely that there'll be new content either within those skills or as separate skills, new skills, to cover workforce planning and to cover the aspects of people management that are not related to performance management. Some of this overlaps with the generic attributes that define the SFIA levels of responsibility. So things like leadership and autonomy and sharing knowledge and influence and so on need to be articulated consistently across the level descriptions within SFIA. And that's all part of this same scope of study. So as well as the updated skills, there will be further guidance emerging for people in people management roles, highlighting the different skills that are needed between people professionals and people managers, some misinterpreted skills, as I've just mentioned, and particularly, of course, people in more contemporary management models where teams are self-managing or are dynamic and transient in their nature. So we're not dealing with traditional hierarchical organizational structure. And SFIA needs to be worded in such a way that it's equally applicable to traditional organizations and to the more dynamic new organizations. So that's the people management side. And now I'll hand back to Peter to pick up on the information security and cybersecurity side of things.
Thank you, Andy. Can I just check it's on the right slide on the screen?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. First of all, the topic around information and cybersecurity. As everyone knows in the industry, this is such a hot topic. It has been covered in some shape or other within SFIA since the very early days, but it is one we keep on coming back to, and it keeps on needing tweaking and improving as the profession and the way that the theme of information and cybersecurity spreads amongst other roles and jobs within organizations. This is one that we started off very early, and special thanks to Andy Taylor, who I know is on the call, Simon Roller and Neil Donachie, who've really put lots of effort into this, done some really, really detailed work to map against industry frameworks to help us give SFIA a really good testing about where it needs to add information and where it needs to add or improve what we've already got. So that's been a really fantastic effort. So hopefully everyone will see the results of that. Some of this has already been published on the website. We've deliberately gone out with a work in progress so we can see how they map into the NIST framework. The NIST framework is the US government cybersecurity framework, a really useful tool for us to look at the completeness of SFIA in terms of how it maps against that important framework. We're also hopeful we've got the COBIT framework mapped to SFIA as well, so we can sort of tie those together and really help people who are using either of those frameworks find a neat link into what it means for people, skills, roles, etc. What we see coming out of that will be a number of updates, a number of new skill levels. We are following the line that security is not just for security professionals, that we need to have it embedded in a number of different skills, and those skills used by a number of different roles. So that's what you will continue to see. And we're also making sure that where roles are directly related to security, so you can imagine for a developer needing skills where they're actually doing secure development, so we put the skills into those skills used by a developer, as well as the ones that will be used directly by what we might call the security specialists. And overall, we're looking to make sure that the generic attributes cover the requirement that security really is relevant for all. So it's not just a topic or a discipline or a responsibility for a select number of people. It needs to be across the whole organization. So plenty to look at there. If you go to the website, you can see what we've got planned and the detail behind it. The next thing I wanted to touch on was one that we're calling employability. And this is about I guess the early days of work, how we can help people move from education into work. And there's a number of industry activity going on, and many of these have been going on for some time. So apprenticeships, work-based learning, industry placements, internships, a drive to have university or other higher education curricula, which are based on competencies rather than just knowledge acquisition. So all of those and the knowledge that we have a number of SFIA users already using SFIA to support these activities suggested we should look at that and see if there's some good practice to share amongst the wider community. And what it's like to look at is that we look at the entry levels of the SFIA skills, so levels 1 and 2 typically, and make sure that the language we're using is accessible if you've not any work experience. Also make sure we're recognizing, are there, as a result of things like apprenticeships or industry placements, are there any of the SFIA skills that we should stretch down into the entry levels to make sure we're covering what those people might be expected to do. We're keen that it's not just describing knowledge, so it should describe responsibility, but of course at that level some of the responsibilities at work are about developing your knowledge of your professional work and of how organizations work as a whole. So this is, again, we've got people looking at this, and thanks to Luke, Frank, Fraser, Catherine have all helped me with bringing their experience of using SFIA in this sort of environment to play. And we're hopeful that we can have a collaboration with the CC 2020 people. So we've had some early conversations there. So let's see where that one goes. And the final one to talk about is one called Readability. And we are aware SFIA is a very rich content, but sometimes there's a lot of content there. So we want to make sure that people can find what they want and find it easily. So if we took the topic of the SFIA skill descriptions, what we're trying to do with this theme is not change the content, but just enhance the content so that people can get to what they need, get to it quickly. We're not trying to dumb down the language, so it's not about saying, you know, let's use words that that are known that simplify some of the key terms we know. We want to use terms that the industry uses when people are using SFIA for their skill assessments or for designing jobs. They need to use the terminology that they would be using. So that's a key feature of SFIA that we don't want to lose. We're also recognise that SFIA, if we go all the way back to Ian's slide with the blue blocks on, we have many different uses of SFIA. And some of those uses, they like lots of detail, and some of the users like just a summary view. So we have quite a competing field to work on. The level of details required for each skill description is kind of use dependent. So we're trying to see if there's something we can do to help that to meet the different needs without compromising the content of SFIA. Our first efforts are really looking at the content and saying, if we have got a skill description, why do we make the restructure the content so that the first thing that people read on a skill description is the most important part of it. And now that sounds fairly obvious, but over time, you know, some of these skill descriptions have a lot of material that may then, the key elements may be buried in the second or third sentence. So why don't we just lift it up to be the first sentence? At the same time, we can reduce the length of some of the sentences, make them a bit simpler as well. So all this thing is all about trying to make the content just more accessible and easier to use. And what we've learned with working with our volunteer translators is that writing better English helps them enormously as well. And the better English we write, the more chances we can have machines doing the translation or doing the bulk of it, and it helps us all around. So a huge long list of people have been involved there. We've had people involved in this theme who are our translators. So we've got Peter Leeson, Ralph Gockel and Miroslav, who've been doing the French, German and Spanish translations. They're helping with this. And then we've got Steve Dustin, Ernest Debeck, Andy Andrews, Jim Owens, Susan McCarthy and Andy Thomson, all been involved and helped us with this. So hopefully this will bear fruit and you'll be able to see the results of this fairly soon. So, conscious of time, I'm going to rush through this next bit. This is all available on the website, and it's a key part in us making this a process where you can all engage with. So, on the website, you can add change requests. This is all public. People will see what you've added, and they can comment on those as well. That's the funnel, the front end of the funnel. As we get to this stage where we're starting to write new content, you can see that on the framework as well. So you can see it, as Ian said, as it's being built. You can see the additions in green text. You can see things deleted in red text. It's all available. Clearly, at this stage, that might be volatile. So things will be added, and they may be reviewed and changed. So this is certainly not something you would want to pick up and start using in your tools or your job descriptions now. But you can see it evolving. And finally, just to help is a complete log of what we're actually doing. Now, typically we've done this at the end of the project as a sort of a release notes, but what I'm going to try and do is to have this available as we go so that you can see what's coming, see the scale and shape of what's been changed, and hopefully that will make it easier for you to comment and raise questions, get involved, whatever it might be. And then finally, we've been sending a news email every month, so that's something new we've not tried before. So give a summary of what's happening, again spark interest, get involved. We're publishing material on the website in terms of work in progress. Again, some of that may not make it to the final version, but you can see what the thought process is. And if you're not on the email list, please sign up for it. That's a good way of being kept up to date in a simple way that hopefully unobtrusive, just once a month you can dip in and see what's happening. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks very much, Peter. Yeah, I mean, we've been picking up questions on the Q&A thread as we've gone along. If you want to add anything in there now, do feel free. If you want to email us with questions, then we can, oops, Peter, you're sharing still. Can you just pop us onto the last slide? That we're all contactable by email or on the phone, but the email addresses are there for each of us. Questions about SFIA policy or officially, that's Ian. Questions about the SFIA 8 update are better sent to Peter. Questions about the use of SFIA by the APS and many of the enterprise activities that have been going on in Grant's area. And anything around the SFIA Council, if you're interested in contributing or perhaps participating, then get in touch with me. But in fact, any of us can field questions and refer you to whoever's best placed to answer them. It'll always be good to hear from you. We're not necessarily canvassing for people to join the council. What we're saying is if you feel that you might have something to contribute in terms of any of the themes or subjects that were mentioned around SFIA 8, you think, oh, actually, I know a bit about that, and I wouldn't mind, putting some wording around the skill description, or I think I could write some user guidelines for that, then just drop an email to one of us at the address on the screen there. And with that, I think I want to say how grateful I am for you all joining us today on this webinar. Hopefully useful, informative, and we wish you well with your SFIA enterprises, and we look forward to hearing from you in due course. Thank you, and goodbye.